To me, if there was one thing, and I talked to O'Neill about this in the pregame, and this is what kind of bugged me. I went through that game with a fine-tooth comb. I looked at every stat, every possible angle on that game. All right, the thing that stood out the most to me was the Warren Sharp piece. Warren Sharp is really sharp, and he broke down the Ravens run game, or the Ravens 49er game before the game. And this is what he wrote. The Ravens struggle against 21 and 22 personnel. When you put two backs on the field, their run defense, according to Warren Sharp, is terrible. Terrible. Okay. When you look at the numbers, the Ravens defense against 21 and 22 personnel, two backs with the fullback on the field, dead last in EPA per rush, dead last in success rate, dead last in yards after contact per rush, and the fourth worst in yards per carry. Then you look at the Niner run offense. They use two running back sets on 60% of their running plays, second highest rate of any offense in the NFL.
Right.
He said this matchup could tilt the game in favor of the 49ers, easing the pressure off of Brock Purdy and giving Kyle Shanahan an edge in play calling. He was right. It all happened. Kyle didn't recognize it, and they lost. That would be my summary.
Yeah, I mean that would be that's a really good summary. That is very much inside the what happened. The other summary would be your starting quarterback threw 4 interceptions, and you're going to lose those games. And it all went into the mix, and it all came out in the wash, and the Ravens were the better team that night for sure about it. Look,
balls get tipped, and sometimes, most of the time, they get tipped and go to the ground. In this game, they got tipped, they went into the air, and then they went to the Ravens' hands.
Yeah, no, look, and I keep on saying excuses.
It's not excuses. I mean, anything.
We're talking about what happened. This is a discussion. I realize that there might be so few.
Is that the bat phone?
Yeah, that is the bat phone. Sorry, Kyle Shanahan. Those Kyle Shanahan calling me to ask if we could make another excuse.
Could you please not talk about Warren Sharp anymore on the show? Thank you. It's Kyle.
Thank you. Look, people keep on saying you're making excuses, or this is the Niners got exposed. The Niners got exposed. How about this?
They didn't get exposed. They outplayed them in a lot of ways.
If you want to, if you're desperate to say the word exposed, how about this? The Niners exposed themselves to a defeat with the mistakes that they made. It's not like somebody yanked the towel off the Niners, leaving them naked. The Niners kind of dropped their own towel. They helped the Ravens beat them at every single turn, and the Ravens don't need much help beating a football team. And they got plenty from the Niners. The interceptions, again, the first one that Purdy threw was bad, all on him. He's got to wear it 1,000,000,000% on Brock. The next 3 interceptions are all on a little bit of a sliding scale of that's football. The second interception was a great play by the blitzing corner. The third interception, kind of on Kittle. It's kind of on Kittle, who it pops off of his shoulder pad and goes right up in the air instead of going to the ground, like Larry just said. And there were flags everywhere. Like 7 flags came out on that play. So Purdy kind of thinks like, fuck it. I got a free play here. I'm trying to make a play. And so
he might not have seen any of those flags, by the way.
Or he might have seen 9 of them. That's the thing. I think he saw the flags, Larry, and that made him think, all right, I'm just going to let this fucker rip because this play's breaking down, and I think I got a free one right here. He got that wrong. And then the fourth one, his arm gets hit by Travis Jones, and that's the Patrick Queen interception. To me, the worst throw of the entire night, other than that first interception to Debo, was the slant to Debo. And you didn't hear this, Larry, because you're in the press box, but at home watching the game, Troy Aikman says he started talking about seeing jerseys. And after you've thrown a few interceptions, you start seeing bigger opponent jerseys, and you're trying to throw into even tighter windows. And that means you're going to throw behind a guy a little, and just a little bit behind a guy could turn into an interception. And that, I thought his second worst throw of the night was a near interception on a simple slant to Debo, which, he's made that play in his sleep all season long. But so it It was a learning night for Brock. Everything went wrong. I don't think at any point in time the young man lost his composure. I don't think at any point in time Kyle Shanahan lost faith in him to be the guy who could bring us back and win this game. It's not like after the third interception, he goes right to Sam Darnold. And normally you throw 3 interceptions. That's enough. We've seen enough of you tonight. And that didn't happen. So there's still a huge level of belief in the guy, and he's having a great year. And that was the worst game we will hopefully see from Brock Purdy, maybe in his career. I mean, it really can't get better than, could you throw 5 interceptions?
It was a bad game.
Yeah.
And he was due. He was due for a really bad game, and he had a really bad game. And when you have that many turnovers, it's a bad day at the office for sure. It happens. It's never enjoyable. Doesn't mean that it somehow eradicates his entire season or nullifies what he's done.
Here's that sounds like an excuse. This isn't an excuse. It's my one buoy of, I guess in some weird way, that is sort of impressive. Let's say Sam Darnold does not throw an interception on his final pass of the evening. That ball gets through to the end zone. It's touchdown Niners. Well, there's no doubt about it. You are still very much odds on the favorite to lose the game, and you're in Dutch. But that would be an 8-point game under the 2-minute warning with 3 timeouts. And the fact that the Niners nearly put themselves in that position to make it a 1-possession game and just a possibility to even maybe tie it up with 5 turnovers and 10 penalties is in its own stupid way kind of impressive. I mean, like it sucks that they lost and they deserve to lose. But there was a point in that game where they were down 4 points with 3 turnovers in the first half. I mean, you're down 4 points with your quarterback throwing 3 interceptions. That is still a survivable event. And for most teams, that would not be a survivable event right there. You're down 28 almost instantly. The fact that the Niners were only down 4, again, it says something. There doesn't say much good, Larry. I mean, there's not a lot to, let's not pretend. You and I are not excuse makers. But a very good football team played a very bad game. And they did so against another very good football team. And that happens in this league. Just because the Niners had a bad night does not now make them a bad team. Just because Brock Purdy had a bad game doesn't mean we have to relitigate whether or not he should even have the job. Progress
Right.
and improvement is not linear. It's not a straight line.
Well, I mean,
there are ebbs and flows, and this guy's having measurably one of the single greatest sophomore seasons any quarterback has ever had.
We're gonna sit there and say, "Oh man, Brock had a bad game, get rid of Brock," are you gonna say the same thing about Nick Bosa? Nick Bosa and Chase Young were supposedly this all-world combo off the edges. Brent Urban had 3 sacks, and those guys didn't have any. So I mean, what? Get rid of Bosa now? Does Bosa stink?
I wouldn't get rid of Nick Bosa.
Yeah,
That's me.
Is
That's me.
Bosa somehow a bum? How many people called up the post game or typed in the chat, "Where the hell's Nick Bosa?" No, because it's just, you know what? You win some, you lose some. The 49, there's been way worse defeats than that. To me, I thought the way the Niners beat the Eagles, was rougher on the Eagles. The way the Niners beat the Cowboys look worse. You can look at this today, and sit there and you go, well, wait a second. You had 100 yards of penalties and 5 picks, 5 turnovers. Does Steve Wilkes need to go because his defense didn't force 1 turnover the entire day? I mean, you got to cut Bosa, you got to cut Chase Young, you got to. It's just, come on, it's just knee-jerk stuff. But
right.
At the end of the day, that's what happened. They didn't play well enough. But this idea, one of the most ridiculous comments I got in the post game last night. If these teams played each other 10 times, the Ravens would win all 10. What?
No.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Seriously, the
tell you what,
49ers did so many good things in that game.
Yeah.
They just turned it over, and they had too many penalties. And then Lamar made every big play. The Ravens played almost a perfect game. Let's be honest here. They played almost a perfect game. Look at the Ravens' talent. They don't have a running back. They really only have one real good receiver. You know, their starting tight end is done for the year. Their starting running back is done for the year. Lamar put the whole thing on his back and made just enough plays. And then their defense, I will say this, the one guy who absolutely was amazing is Kyle Hamilton. Kyle Hamilton, the Notre Dame corner or Notre Dame safety that plays nickelback and plays linebacker and plays safety. I mean, he had 3 passes defensed. He had 2 picks. He had 5 tackles. 3 of them were solo. He seemed like he was always in the middle of the action. Credit them. I mean, you know, the old saying, they get paid as well. They played a phenomenal game. But, I mean, Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner combined for 22 tackles. So it wasn't Greenlaw and Warner. I thought Greenlaw and Warner made a number of plays. The Niners just, you know, they didn't get your big players have to play well. Nick Bosa not only didn't have any sacks, he didn't have a single hit on the quarterback. You know, Randy Gregory, I thought played well. I watched him on the binoculars. He was active. He made 3 tackles. He had half a sack. He had 1 hit on the quarterback. The trio of Chase Young, Randy Gregory, Nick Bosa, their teeth off the edge combined had 1 hit on the quarterback or 2. 2 hits on the quarterback all night long. And to me, the Chase Young lack of wrap up on Lamar on that run was just brutal.
Yeah.
He had him absolutely wrapped up, and he got away.
Dude, Lamar's got legs, baby.
And he's got strength. He's a combination. Like Kyler's fast and Hurts is strong. Lamar's both. Lamar's fast, elusive, and strong. So it's just, you know, I mean, credit Baltimore. They had the edge. They played with that edge. They exploded for 17 points in a disastrous third quarter. Brock Purdy had the worst game of his career. He still made a number of good plays, but 4 picks is 4 picks, and ain't getting around that, you know. Nope. And Brock, if he were sitting here on this show right now, he would own that. But don't tell me the Niners got thoroughly outclassed. They ran from 7 yards a carry. The only thing I would complain about if Kyle was sitting here is, Kyle, you were going for almost 8 yards a carry in the first half. Why didn't you just try to run it down their throat? I mean, they've got a defense that's really talented on the back end. I mean, look at some of those players.
Throw JP Mason in there. Let him take some hard carries. You know,
well, not only that, the numbers show, Damon, that the Ravens were, you know, one of the worst run defenses in all of football against teams that have 2 backs. The Niners have 2 backs. They're running it for 7.5 a carry. And it's a 16-12. It's a 4-point game at halftime. And you came out passing, and I don't know. I mean, I would have liked to have seen in this game, based on the numbers and based on the Ravens personnel and how they looked on their profile, I would have liked a 45 run pass split. And it was the other way, really, in the first half. It probably should have been a run dominant game plan.
Look, it felt like special teams where you knew the Ravens were going to have an advantage. They kept it their advantage all night long. You had Debo slipping on a kick return. You had Ronnie Bell once again fumbling a ball out of bounds. Now, he fair caught a couple of others and at least didn't turn it over, but that is still a little bit of an adventure. Mitch Wisnowski had a punt that's net was 19 yards after you tacked on. And I saw earlier in the comments, somebody called him Mitch Greenlaw with that out of bounds hit, Larry. That was pretty funny. Special teams, Justin Tucker just doesn't miss. And so
he's awesome. He's the greatest kicker I've ever seen. That guy's for sure. Steve Cass says JP Mason would have to punish the Ravens front line. Would have loved to have seen JP Mason get, I don't know, maybe a carry. No carries for him.